right. Politics is a big part of our business, and understanding who we go to when we need help, who to advise our clients to go to. Councilmember King has worked for the previous council member, is my understanding. We're going to let you tell your story. I'm not going to tell it, but and then took over District C almost 4 years ago and is running for re-election. So I thought he'd be a great person to hear from. So everybody welcome Councilmember Freddie King. Hey, nice to meet you. Did you turn your microphone on to green? Perfect.
All right.
So just thought I know you're very busy right now. I appreciate you making time for us and coming to see us. Tell us about yourself.
Okay.
I know you got 5 kids, and I've got 3, and I don't know how you do it.
A great wife. That's how I do it. That's how I do it.
See, he is smart.
So, good morning, everyone. My name is Freddie King. I am running for re-election for District C, which covers all of Algiers, the West Bank, part of Orleans Parish, French Quarter, Marigny, Bywater, a part of Treme, and part of St. Roch, and soon to be all of Treme. I'm born and raised in Algiers, District C, on the West Bank. Went to Shaw in Marrero for high school. I see you got some Shaw, at least one Shaw fans in the back. Went to Southeastern in Hammond for undergrad. That's where I met my wife. Was on the football team there for 4 years. From there, went to Southern University Law Center in Baton Rouge. Got my law degree, came back home, and after years of practicing, was able to buy my own piece of property in Algiers and converted that blighted piece of property to a law firm. Worked in a former council member, also Judge Nadine Ramsey's office from 2014 to 2017. And after that, just focused on growing my law practice, growing my family. That's where the 5 kids come at. And ran and won this district in 2021. And been in the office ever since then, and enjoying it.
Well, tell us about one of your proudest accomplishments as a council member.
Well, I have a lot of accomplishments. My main accomplishment, something that you really won't see on the stat sheet, I like to say, something that you really won't see in the news or read about, is just that my involvement with our youth. I spend a lot of time going to places like JJIC, which is Juvenile Justice Intervention Center. Was just there last week, talking to those young men and women, because a lot of folks don't realize they don't always realize they'll be out one day, whether it's next month or next year or the next few years, they'll be out, and it's that attention and it's that time they're having right now, growing them and developing themselves, that's going to determine how they re-enter society. So I try to spend a lot of time with them, letting them know that they're not forgotten, letting them know that the world hasn't forgotten about them, and they had some bad breaks in life, but they are still a part of our community, a part of our society. So just a lot of things that I do is mentoring, working with youth. A lot of things on the council is going to take care of itself, and you're going to have some great wins, you're going to have some uh-oh moments, but that time I spend with the youth is very, very near and dear to me. Not just the kids that's incarcerated in JJIC, but I coach t-ball and soccer and with my kids and their teams. Go visit, speak at Career Day in high schools, visit different high schools. Every year, we since the beginning, we've given $1,000 scholarship every summer during the Essence Fest. A lot of people come down and have a good time for Essence Fest. I feel it's important to let the kids who are now in college, we target those college kids who were once local high school students, let them know you're kind of in a rough part. You're a junior or senior in college. We haven't forgot about you. Here's a little something just to get you over that junior or senior hump. I remember how it was.
Yeah.
On a full athletic scholarship, still struggling before NIL deals, still struggling to try to to eat and to have a good time. So we want to give back to those kids. And every year for Bayou Classic, we give $1,000 to a Southern University Law Center student and $1,000 to a Grambling State University student. Again, just let them know you're in law school, times are difficult, there is light at the end of the tunnel, and you aren't forgotten about. So those are my proudest achievements and accomplishments, just the time that I've spent in giving back to the youth in this city.
Thank you for sharing that. I think that's a big deal.
Thank you.
Something, early childhood education is a big place of investment and passion for my wife and I. Mm-hmm. But I constantly worry about the kids that slip through the cracks and end up in juvenile detention. What kind of educations are we giving them?
Giving the kids that
are in juvenile detention. Are they getting? I mean, that you mentioned the problem. They're going to get out one day.
Yeah, they're going to get out one day.
Are they getting a reasonable high school education? I mean, this is something we never talk about as a society, and I think is one of the.
I tell you this: my dad not taught. I guess he did teach. He was a correction officer for over 25 years at LTI in Bridge City.
Explain.
LTI is also known as Louisiana Training Institute. It's pretty much prison for kids. They have jail, then they have prison where they go for a longer stay. So he was there for 25 years, and I actually interned before I went to school, before I went to college, and then college over there for a while. And that's what I grew up learning. Like, hey, when I would get in trouble, he would call home with some of those kids on the phone, and he would tell me, like, you don't want to be here. And I wasn't doing anything serious. I may have gotten an F on the report card, got detention in school, but he was just letting me know that there are kids who wish they had what you have. And he was telling me how this is the best place for a lot of these kids. When they come here, they get a meal, 3 meals a day. They get snacks. They get TV time. They get the recreational time. They go to the dentist. They go to the doctor. They get shown love. And it went in one ear and out the other until I saw, when I was working there, a kid crying because he had to go home. So fast forward, I don't know, 25 years now, I'm on a council. I see that at the juvenile jail where there was actually a kid who came back, like he was released, and he came and knocked on the door, said, "Can I come back? I have nowhere to go. My case, I was exonerated, case is completed, my time is done, but I have nowhere to go. I'm on the streets now." So you asked about the education. They do go to school. It's called the Travis Hill School, but the nurturing and the love that they get while locked up is something that none of them ever experience. A few of them rarely experience.
But they're not at the Ritz-Carlton here. This is not. I want to make sure it doesn't come across like people are like they're in some great environment. This is just, it's better than what they had at home.
And to them, that's a great environment. Miss Danisha, Miss Williams, I get the first, I may mispronounce her first name, but Miss Williams, she was a director over there, and she tells me a lot, and we work on a lot together, and she may be the better person to really get the inside scoop to talk to. But when I go there and she'll say, afterwards, she'll let me know, like, this kid background is this, and now you realize why they're so appreciative to come to jail. Like there are stories, and I'll just share this brief story, and this really opened my eyes. You see stuff on TV, and you're like, man, these individuals are horrible. I saw, so it happened in Algiers. It was in the parking lot where 2 teenagers committed a carjacking. The mom ran inside real quick, and she left her kids in the car running. I think a lot of us are guilty of that. And 2 teenagers carjacked her with her kids in the car. You think, man, these kids are horrible. Lock them up, throw away the key. You're stealing from, you're carjacking teenagers. So she shared the story. She said that the young lady who was a part of it, her mom is deceased, and her dad, there's no relationship there. As a matter of fact, she came to jail to visit the young man about a year before with a newborn baby in her arm. So she said, you can't be here. You're 15. It's raining. How did you get to juvenile jail from Algiers? I caught the bus with only a baby in a blanket. So fast forward, her and her boyfriend, they're both out now, and they're committing carjackings. And you realize that they don't know, I hate to say it, they don't really have any other options in life. So a year ago, they had a brand new baby, and she went to visit him in the rain with just a blanket. And now they're out together committing these carjackings. And there's a whole lot more levels to that story, but that's to give you an idea of these kids really have no guidance. They really have no idea what love is. And just going back to my accomplishments as a council member, I really enjoy bringing my son, who is 5, so they can see this is how a black dad and a son, this is how their relationship can be. Because a lot of them never met their dad, never saw their dad, or there's no relationship.
No models.
None, except for the ones saying, this is how you sell drugs, this is how you do what you got to do with the drugs, this is how you commit a carjacking. So much so, when I go without my son, they say, hey, where's little Freddie? He was here last time. So I just like them to see that image of a positive black male role model with his son, who is pouring into his child as well as pouring into them. So they get a traditional education, but the love that they get. We have crawfish balls over there, and we bring the video game systems so they can be a teenager, because they never had a chance to do that until being locked up.
Well, thank you for what you do there and for sharing that.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's. Let's go back to the council.
Mm-hmm.
Council puts forth a lot of different resolutions. Some don't pass. A bunch don't pass.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's a few that got away that you wish you could get back. That are meaningful and a passion thing for you. If you could get some support behind it, what would you try to pass today?
This is a pie in the sky, maybe real one day, but this is one thing that I always think about. So there's a lot of attention, and rightfully so, around our unhoused community, and that's a whole other discussion, why it's happening and why it's so prevalent in the city and why it's so prevalent in certain parts of the city and not in others. But I would like to, if I had my dream legislation, be able to take a piece of property, let's say the towers.
Crescent City Tower?
Crescent City Tower.
Well, Plaza Tower.
Plaza Towers on across from the.
It's almost the Crescent City Towers. One of those towers.
Across from the courthouse, not across from the post office.
Terminal.
Right. My dream legislation was to take that and say, if you are a recent college grad, or a college law student, Tulane law student, or med student, or grad student, you can stay here, subsidized rent, while you're figuring life out as a recent college grad, or as a student in med school, graduate school, but a student that has getting a post-bachelorate degree. I think if we spend that type of energy and resources in our young talent, they won't go away to Dallas, to Houston, to Atlanta. And we can also say, you can stay here, if not rent-free, subsidized rent, but you have to commit to working in the city, working in the city for 3 years. So we're going to give you time to save rent for 3 years, or however long it is. And once you become that doctor or that lawyer, now you have to sign a contract where you work at the public defender's office or the DA's office or at University Hospital or for the health department for City Hall for 3 years. So that way we can retain a lot of our talent that's, God bless you, that's often leaving. I have a friend of mine whose daughter went to Newman, went to DePaul for undergrad, and came back home for about a year, maybe not even a year, and she said, I got to go back to Chicago. Yeah. I just got to go back. So try to keep some of that talent and those resources, those homegrown resources, keep them home.
You walked right into where I was going next, which is we talk all the time about the U-Haul problem. Too many U-Hauls leave Louisiana and not enough come in every year. Yeah. Way too many leave. You've had some interesting votes over your tenure as council member. How do you, when there is a tough vote that comes up, what's the mental calculus you go through thinking about and balancing expanding the economy here and maybe the vocal minority that makes themselves seem like they are the end all be all? I mean, you deal with the toughest group, in my opinion, the VCC and VC Pora and the French Quarter people. And look, Algiers Point, you've got some very active neighborhood associations. Marigny Triangle Group, that's not a picnic either. They're all very vocal. So how do you balance that when you're going to cast a vote? I'm not trying to make you. I didn't think I was trying to not ask you about one specific vote. Let's put it that way.
No, that you know what? So I always say District C is the toughest district, and I always joke with my colleague Councilmember Harris. So you have the second hardest, with District B with the French Quarter, with the Superdome and the Lower Garden, and all that comes with that. But District C is the most challenging district, and it's not because the river. People say, how do you balance the East Bank and the West Bank? Well, that's easy.
That ferry's fast, man. The new ferry's great.
Not even a ferry. It's simple because what happens in Algiers doesn't affect, for the most part, what happens in French Quarter. You know, what happens in the French Quarter doesn't affect what happens in Algiers. Algiers, outside the point, really doesn't care about short-term rentals. Like somebody in Tall Timbers or in Bocage or in English Turn doesn't really care about or is aware of a short-term rental issue. So that's easy. The hardest part about District C is just managing, being at both, this neighborhood meeting. So that's the easy part. The toughest part about District C are the competing interests in the French Quarter, in the Marigny, in Bywater, because you may have a piece of property on the block and you have 3 different groups with opinions on what that property should be. Yeah. And they're all are very vocal and they all very organized. So what I do is I look at where is the support and where the support isn't. And if it's very, very lopsided, then that kind of makes it easy. But sometimes it can be 60-40, 50-50, almost a coin toss. And you have to look at what's best for the city, what's best for that community, what's best for the neighbors, and just do your best to balance all of those. And I often say, put myself in those individual shoes. If I was, that doesn't, can make everyone happy, but if I live here, would I be happy with this decision? So I'll give you an example where you have to dig a little deeper and kind of walk the streets and knock on doors. So there was an issue of parklets. Are y'all familiar with parklets? Mm-hmm. So they're very heavy in Bywater and Marigny, and it was coming time for the parklets program to end.
This was the post-COVID outdoor dining solution.
Yeah.
You're in a 2x4 tent, basically.
They're everywhere in the country.
Yeah, like Manhattan, they're really everywhere.
Everywhere. France and European countries have them. We experiment with them after COVID. People can't be inside. Great idea to have parklets. So one particular group was very anti-parklets. Like, keep the bars inside, keep the restaurants inside. COVID's over. Let's get back to normal life and get rid of the parklets. And they were very adamant and very opinionated. And I was like, well, this makes sense. No one wants them. And then I started hearing rumblings like, hey, you get rid of these parklets.
I'm the close.
It's 30% of my business. It's 40% of my business. Then I started hearing that residents are saying, nah, you need to talk to more people because there are a lot of supporters of these parklets. So what we did is we had a neighborhood meeting right in the heart of the Marini and found out that actually 70% of those who came to the meeting, and we also had a QR code. We could do a survey. That's for your phone number, your address, and your name, so it could be very, very transparent. And kept it open for 3 days, and 70% of those who responded said we're in favor of the parklets. So that's what you have to be aware of, the vocal constituents and those who aren't vocal because they just don't know how to reach out to council members. They have to go to work, they have to go to school with their kids, and they're not always able to go to neighborhood meetings and voice their concerns. That's just one of many examples where you have to do that juggling act, that balancing act. A lot of times is zoning issues where this is a vacant lot or vacant property and is bringing nothing to the city. It's actually taking city resources to keep it clean or to keep it clean of vacants. But you have a community that says we don't want anything to happen just yet, or what's being proposed we don't want. Well, how do you try to have a compromise? How do you try to figure out what works for everybody, what works for the most people? And that could be very challenging. It's not an easy decision to make. You're gonna make some people mad. That's part of being a councilman. When you tell somebody yes, you're telling somebody no, and vice versa. But having community support and being honest with yourself and with the residents, saying, hey, I knocked on doors, I took emails, I took phone calls. Yeah, I understand you may not want this in your neighborhood, but you have neighbors that support it. So how can we meet in the middle? And that's a special formula.
Well, thank you for sharing your process there. I'll give you kind of our appeal to everyone that visits us. And we don't take a side of saying we're pro-STR or anti-STR, but we do say changing the rules constantly is a major problem for our community, for our investors, for people that live here. We've seen a lot of people get hurt from this constant changing of the rules. Yeah. And I understand there's lawsuits and there's all these things that force some changes and that sort of thing. But I think a perfect example is when the French Quarter acted early, what was it, 2017, to ban STRs. They really, that decision for the French Quarter, I think, was awful for the residents of Treme, Marini, and Bywater. And they sent out, and people that had lived in those areas their whole life now could not afford to stay in those neighborhoods, whether because the property taxes going up or just because they couldn't afford to not take that offer. Right. And those aren't really market forces when there's cherry-picked legislation. So I think that we would ask you that, and I think the last thing that we hear a lot in the field from is when the city council makes a decision, and what happened at the Hard Rock is the loss of life is terrible, the negligence on behalf of the contract, all those things we're not endorsing at all. However, the city council is saying, hey, we're going to get rid of the 65-foot ban and basically say you can build a doghouse on this thing and kill all the zoning there, just so that it's now not a development site at all in the city in play, unless somebody goes and spends years begging the city council to change the use and going through the process. I think that's a miss. I think that's a mistake. What's your you were involved in that. What's your take?
I wasn't. So the Hard Rock happened.
Oh, right before you took your okay.
All of that legislation.
But the change of the use was approved by.
I think what I try to do, I'm going to speak for myself, is try to take the emotion out of decision making, because when you act off of emotion, you sometimes regret your decisions. And that's not just with the council, that's with disciplining my kids, that's with making financial investments. Try to take that emotion out. And that could be difficult because being an elected official is a highly emotionally driven field. You have a lot of people pulling at you. So that's what I try to do. As it relates to the short-term rentals, now I took some heat with this. It was 1 per square block. That was the rule, 1 per square block. And I asked to have 1 per square block plus the two short-term rental exceptions per square block, going up to 3 possible short-term rentals. Still going to be vetted by the City Planning Commission. You still have to get support from your immediate neighbors and the council members. We do our own independent research or investigation of the people applying for short-term rentals. And even those council members who may have been opposed to that decision granted many of those exceptions because they realize that this 1 per square block it's good, and I see the purpose of the rules, but you have somebody who's been in this neighborhood for 20 years, and they had a short-term rental prior to this rule coming up, and now they lost it. And not only did they lose their short-term rental, they lost their ability to make extra income to pay their mortgage, to make extra income to pay their Medicaid, their medical expenses, or their rising insurance rates. So I think once you take the emotion out and realize that short-term rentals can 100% be harmful. It happened in District C in Marion, Treme, Bywater. You had complete blocks decimated because they were just short-term rentals. But on the flip side, you got to realize that I may also be displacing a resident by limiting their ability to do a short-term rental. I had a young man, this is kind of a turning point for me.
And this is why we don't take a point, by the way.
It's difficult.
It's not our job to take a position on it, first of all. We've got 120 agents, and everybody's got opinions and clients, and we've got to serve everybody. Everybody's money is green. I just think and look, I get that why exceptions were made, and I don't fault anyone for that. I think the process kind of worked out for a lot of people until just recently. They kind of stopped granting exceptions, and now we're in an enforcement period, right?
I tell you why we stopped granting exceptions, because you had people, so the exception was for people who had homes, who found it challenging to get an exception because there's only 1 per square block. Then we found out people were buying houses just to get the exception. So they did a workaround the rule that we put in place to try to help the single retired nurse who we had, the school educator who said, look, this helps me pay my bills. But what was a turning point for me is when a young man, he said, he came to the meeting. We had a big short-term rental meeting. He said, I went to Lusher at the time, now Willow. Graduated. Went to LSU. Graduated, got engaged, and I moved back home, and my fiance and I bought a double. Our plan is to rent one side as a short-term rental and live on the other side. So we're not going to have any wild parties, but we're going to be here. If I can't do that, then we're leaving. We gotta go to another city, another state, because it's just too hard, too high. It was an uptown house. It was the mortgage is too high. He said, I did everything I was told to do. Go to school, settle trouble, come back home and invest in my community. And now you're telling me that I can't do my short-term rental. And I'm living here. I'm not a whole home. Everyone's a good whole home short-term rentals for the most part. He's like, how is that helping me? So the same people who are fighting to not displace residents will in turn displace me and my fiance because we can't afford to live here. So that's when I thought about, man, this exception rule would help this young man who did everything we asked him to do. And now we're telling him that's not good enough because of these short-term rental exceptions, short-term rental rules. So it's a difficult situation. We did the best we could to try to put up guardrails, but people abused those guardrails. That's why we had to change the rules yet again. I do believe it helped a lot of people during the time we had the exceptions up. But unfortunately, people always find a way to break the rules or to skirt the rules. But I just want to say, with the whole home short-term rentals, I don't believe anybody that's bad for a lot of people, residents, for investors. Well, maybe not all investors, but it's bad for a city, whole home short-term rentals. And you mentioned the French Quarter. Now, I tell the French Quarter residents all the time, there's a ban on short-term rentals. I said, do you think there are no short-term rentals in the French Quarter? They're everywhere. There are all these websites that pop up that I never heard of. Like, we get random emails saying, here's this new website that's advertising short-term rentals. So it's a ban in the French Quarter. That definitely pushed out the short-term rentals to Treme and Marigny and Bywater, where they may advertise short-term rental across the street from the French Quarter. So they're still capitalizing on it. And the more the council figures out ways to improve the system, you got somebody a step ahead trying to figure out a way to get around that improvement.
Well, thanks for being so candid. I want to leave a little time to open it up for questions. Tina put her hand up. First guy on.
First of all, I personally think the French Quarter is the perfect place in the city to have short-term rental because there aren't that many residents. But I'm not asking that question.
Thank you. We all appreciate it.
My question is, which somebody else is going to ask this, permits. I know that every city council person that's come in here, we have talked about permits. The lack of direction, insight, leadership, logical flow of business that is not taking place at city permits is ridiculous. Simple things like getting electricity turned on in a house cannot be done. It's just crazy. And we've always asked every person that comes in here to please reassess, reevaluate, and change the way that office is run. I'm sure you've heard that. So that's not really a question, but you can comment on it.
Yeah, it's bad. So we've taken action. Our office put together a permitting task force. It was with those in the historical preservation field, developers, residents, contractors. We put them all in the room for months, or at least a month or weeks. And yeah, it's for months. And they went around to different neighborhoods and got feedback, and they came up with some real tangible ways to change the permitting office. Some were accepted and acted upon, some not so much. But we did, I did what I could do in my capacity as just a district council member to try to effect change in that office. It's disappointing when I talked to a grocery store owner and I told him that there is a food desert in the Algiers Point area. If you're familiar with that area, you either go to Rouse's in Gretna, or you got to go down to Gall to maybe Walmart, or now it's Aldi or Rouse's. But in that general Algiers, old Algiers Point area, there's a food desert. And that grocery store owner said, I'm not doing any more business in New Orleans. I'm having a fight right now with my gentility store. I hope I can give it away who it is. I'm having a fight right now with my gentility store permits, and I just rather go to Jefferson Parish because it's a lot easier. And hearing that from somebody who knows it's a need, who knows that they can make a difference, but they don't want to fight the red tape and the hoops and the hurdles, that's disappointing. I hear so many, not as big as a grocery store, but I hear developers say, or contractors say, if I have two vacant lots, one in the surrounding parish and one in Orleans Parish, by the time I get my permits to start building in Orleans Parish, my foundation, my slab is already poured. I got my frame coming up in the next parish over. So that's no one wants to hear that. You talk about U-Hauls leaving. That's another way to have U-Hauls leaving. So safety and permits definitely needs an overhaul. It definitely needs some just sensible ideas there. I do think certain rules we have do more harm than good, and they're not sensible, reasonable rules. It's not always black and white. And I'll give you one more example not about building permits, just about business permits. So there's a restaurant called Plume. It's a mom and pop owned store restaurant in Algiers.
Delicious, best Indian food in the city.
It's right. So you're familiar with Plume. They bought a house across the street. So they live across the street. Their son goes to a nursery next door to the house. So their whole life is right in front of them. Well, they're busy running a restaurant. They're busy making payroll, paying for food, cooking food. They didn't update their city alcohol license. And they updated their state alcohol license every year. Because the state gave a notice via mail. And they said, look, we just sent this email that the city gave us. We never check it. We didn't try to ignore the safety and permits department because we did the state permits. So if we were trying to hide, we wouldn't have paid for any permits. So the city basically said, you got to pay so much per month, going back 2 years, or you're going to lose your liquor license. It was like, why are we harming this company who clearly made a mistake?
We have an amnesty program for tickets that wasn't well received. Why can't you say amnesty program for that kind of stuff?
The funny thing is, the ironic thing is, my office gave safety and permits a solution months before this happened. They refused to take it and say we're going to do our own thing. And we rejected that and said, go back to the drawing table because what you have is not working. Had they listened to our office prior, this wouldn't have been an issue. But I think that's just an example of it's not black and white. That's gray. You have a business who has paid their state licenses renewals for years. They clearly forgot. They're not trying to harm anybody. They have all kind of community support, but the city is still saying, no,
We're taking taxes from all those alcohol sales.
Exactly. So it's just a lot of, it's got to put the human element into it and not just be a machine and say, yes, no, you broke it. Well, why did you break it? Did you know you were breaking the law? Or have you done this in the past? Is there a repeat habit of you continually breaking this rule? If not, then let's do what makes sense.
How did it come out? Because summer kind of happened, and I think we lost track of that story.
So the hearing has been deferred. We introduced legislation to prevent this in the future so people get a better notice, but that situation with Plume is still being heard in the city.
Okay. Go on.
I have two questions. I'll start with one question. Algiers wise. And so I look at Algiers as like the last frontier. I have a house in Algiers, and like most of it's ex-flood zone, affordable houses, and all of those things. But there are like pockets where it's like Vespasian, West Bend, Herschel, where there's like sofas and tires and all of these things that like are just everywhere. And so I was wanted to know, like, what would be the process? Who would you have to call? Like, my mom is an Algiers also, and she doesn't always feel safe just because the clutter in like some of the areas that haven't been addressed. Like, people have like old apartment complexes that they never did anything with, and it's just stuff everywhere. And so, is it a thing where more of the residents need to call or like complain about it, or does the city have like protocols in place where because it's evident, and so it becomes a safety issue at some point?
Well, it's a common sense solution. We need more crime cameras in those areas to catch who's doing illegal dumping because it's the same areas, and it's not somebody dumping a bag of trash. It's tires, it's sofas, it's
Barbecue grills,
HVAC materials. So what we need in that area you mentioned, West Bend, Herschel, are cameras. But so I'm glad we're here at Keller Williams. That property next to it is called Oakmont. Oakmont's like a 300-unit apartment complex that was formerly owned by Josh Bruno. He lost at an auction. The person who won it, I think, may have bit off more than they could chew, and
They won.
They won.
That's what we say at auctions.
And they won two properties. One on the other side of the school board, which is on West Bend, which is almost ready to go, and the Oakmont. Well, the Oakmont's back up for sale, and I was told just by some people who are in real estate and development, that's a tough lift. It's that one particular property is tough. It would have to come down a lot on the price, but that property, that 300-unit property being there, it attracts people coming to dump. It attracts the high, the grass is high. So to fix that, and we get that clean about once a month, the sanitation department comes out and picks up all the sofas and all the tires and rubble. I think we need to get some crime cameras so we can see who is actually dumping. And when we catch them, because the police have caught a few of them on Tullis in different parts of Algiers, they arrest them. They get summoned. They go to court. They got to pay fines and fees. So it's about getting crime cameras. And the city said we want to have money for crime cameras, but you're spending that money on the other hand, picking up the trash. So either you have money to pick up trash, or either way you're going to spend the money and resources.
I guess one more question. I'll quick. Separate. City council as a whole, when you're like making a decision, so like for instance, like the Airbnb issue, so there's a loud majority minority that come to you guys and air their grievances or complaints, and that's something you have to consider. Mm-hmm. And then on the other side, there are people that are like, hey, well, the city is getting all of this tax revenue, which is a benefit to citizens, but it's a conflict between the two. And so when you guys are making decisions, is it like, or whoever's the loudest, so we can kind of shut them up for lack of a better, or is it like, what's the most good, like, or what makes the most money? Because I think people get frustrated because you can't tell like the method in which the decisions are being made.
It is who voices their opinion the most. It's not always the loudest. It's who people send emails, people make phone calls, people come to your office. What I like to do is, when I have decisions, I would get a graphic, and we'll put like red circles for people who oppose it, or green circles for people who support it, so that people know out of all the emails and phone calls we receive, here's our people who support it, and here are those who don't support it. So when we say we're making this decision based off of community feedback, it's very transparent. It's black and white, or it's red and green, who supports it and who doesn't. Now, sometimes it's 50-50, and you got to do that coin toss, and that's where you as a council member decide with your staff or whatever, like, what's the best way to move forward with this issue in front of us, because listen to the community, it can go either way.
Cindy.
Thanks for being here. I am just curious, in your district, are you aware that live music on Rampart Street is illegal, which is where jazz started, with Congo Square, Armstrong Park, the anchor of the New Orleans Jazz and Heritage Foundation, and Cosimo Matassa's building with all the historical plaques? What came from there is now illegal. Any thoughts?
Not to put that one out, actually.
Well, I'll tell you, sometimes you have businesses or residents who can't function because the music is so loud. And you have to be mindful of those individuals. So that's one way, well, one reason it became illegal. And there are more people who push back on making it illegal. That's a tough one.
I mean, that really came out of the that really came out of the CZO, right? I mean, that was a sin of the CZO.
Ordinance and different things. That's a tough one.
You can mitigate
a mixture of residential and commercial. Mm-hmm. So it's.
I'm just curious because we're all talking about economic development, the social economy, I mean the cultural economy, blah blah blah. Disney comes and takes everything we do and sells it for $100 million, and we cannot do what we do to the world where it started. Explain that to me.
I don't have an answer.
I'm just curious.
Yes.
We'll leave you with a tough one here. Not as tough as that. There's rumblings that are some major revenue sources for the city are ending. COVID money, IDA money from the feds, even Katrina money from the feds. And next year we're looking at a $70 to $120 million budget deficit. what do we do? Do we have to pray for a hurricane to get more federal funding? I mean, I don't think they're going to give it to us this time. I'm obviously being facetious, but I don't think a lot of people understand how much money has been coming in from the feds to keep the city finances flush, and it sure doesn't feel like we're flush. So what do we do when we take away a nice percentage of the budget?
Well,
would that be 8% that we'd have to cut?
Yeah, about that. There's going to be a bond fund coming up on the November ballot where we're going to try to do about $500 million in bonds. Half of that is going to go, roughly half is going to go to our infrastructure, drainage, streets. Some of that's going to go to capital projects. I support that bond fund. That's going to give the new administration a bit of a kickstart with $500 million. But I think that could do so much. I think ultimately, talking about permits and talking about business, we have to become what we once were, and that's a city that invites businesses, a city that it's not a bad thing to say pro-business, because a city can't survive without attracting business. A city like New Orleans. So when people say pro-business, they sometimes make it sound like it's a bad thing. You can be pro-business and also pro-neighborhood, but I think we have to try to strike that balance where we're not running businesses away. We're not telling businesses no by the way we treat them, by how difficult it is to get a permit. And really, I look at downtown Gretna. I used to have an office on Huey P. Long, in the 200 block of Huey P. Long, and this was pre-COVID. There was really nothing there. Now they have a brewery coming. There's the River Shack. There's coffee shops. There are bakeries. There's restaurants. If downtown Gretna can do it, and no not to Gretna, they're not New Orleans. They're not Algiers, Point. They're not.
Kenner's doing it. I mean,
so it's like, I think sometimes it's a professional game of copycat. Look what's working right across the river, right across the street, and let's emulate that, and not always being that no city, the city of no. Let's try to get that balance where we're inviting businesses and we're also protecting our communities. I think we can do both at the same time.
that's great. Cody, do you have a final question? Or
Yeah, well, let's end on a very happy note. I like the pie in the sky ideas. I think we had a similar idea with Plaza Tower. I think, visions like that is what really takes us forward and out of just talking about catch basins all the time. Anything else going on in your district that is exciting or you'd like to see? The riverfront. I mean, there seems to be some good movement. What's some updates and the fun things in the district?
So the riverfront, the Audubon Commission, they're expanding. They want to basically open up the riverfront from Bywater, right at the lower 9, Bywater on Poland, all the way to the convention center, which will be a walkable, joggable, bikeable, I think maybe 2 mile stretch of land that every major city that's on the river has. You have it in New York, you have it in Chicago. I think something like that would really benefit the entire city, not just District C, not just French Quarter, Bywater, Marigny, but it would tell businesses we're open for business, come invest in our city. And right now we have a riverfront that, can you name any real?
The Natchez.
The Natchez.
Creole Queen.
Now, the Riverwalk. But you have a riverfront that's really close to business. And where do you see that in any major city? Talking about Gretna, they're taking advantage of their riverfront more than, and this is a very small portion of it, more than we are. Also in Bywater, there's a tech company coming in called New Lab. New Lab is a company that started in the shipyards in Brooklyn. They transformed that community. They went to Detroit. They transformed that community, and now they're coming to New Orleans. So basically, wherever this company go, they bring business. They bring tenants. They're like a Walmart. They bring
for entrepreneurs, though.
For entrepreneurs.
I've been to the Detroit one in the old library of the train station. It's incredible. I was just snapping, but they were like, you can walk around, do whatever. And I was just snapping pictures.
And they're coming here.
And that's incredibly exciting. New Lab.
New Lab. So they're going to be at the Bywater Naval Station. They already rented, have a lease for 33,000 square feet. So that's going to help the Lower Nine, the Bunny Friend neighborhood.
It's going to help the whole city,
The
in my
whole
opinion.
city. So those are two big things on the riverfront that is happening. So we have to embrace that. Stop saying, no, we don't want this or that. Let's embrace it because, and I'll leave with this.
Yeah, we're good.
I was listening to a radio host years ago. He said in the 80s, when he had the oil boom, it was in the South. You had New Orleans, you had like Miami, and Atlanta. Those were the three major southern cities. Somewhere in the 90s, it became Atlanta, Miami, New Orleans, you name the other southern cities. Now it's Atlanta, Miami, Dallas, Austin, Houston,
Birmingham,
Nashville, and now we're third. This is his opinion. Now we're a third tier southern city with Memphis, and with mentioned Nashville. I'm always hearing great things about Nashville. So we want to continue to fall on that pecking order of southern cities, where now it's Lafayette or Jackson, Mississippi, New Orleans. Do we want to be on that? My wife is from New Iberia, so I understand that. I got love for West Louisiana, but I don't want to be on that same playing field with the sugar cane capital of the world. I want to be up here with Miami and Orlando and Austin. Austin has passed us up. So we have to figure out what we want to be in the next 20 years as a city. Do we want to rise back up to the upper echelon of southern cities or really cities in the country? Or do we want to keep falling every notch every so often? And I think we all want to rise up, but how do we do that? I think the riverfront coming up is going to be a big, big thing. And this new lab company coming in is going to really transform that Bywater area. Really the whole city is another big win for the city to move forward.
100%.
Well, everybody, you gave us a ton of time. Thank you so much, Councilman King.
Thank you.